Boys and girls, allow me to introduce you to Andy Warhol, American pop artist. Here's Andy Warhol hanging out in what he called the factory. The factory was Andy's large art studio where not only he created his works of art, but he also had friends working with him to create works of art as well. He's considered a pop artist because he loved to create works of art based on things in popular culture. Popular culture is what you see every day all around you, including what you see at the grocery store. Not only would he make works of art based on popular culture, but then he would take that work of art and reproduce it again and again. This method of creating art that he used is not painting. It is called silk screen printing. Silk screen printing is a kind of printing where a stencil is used. As you can see here, ink is placed over the fabric of the stencil. It goes through the fabric of the stencil and becomes a print. Not only did Andy Warhol create prints of himself this way. This is a self-portrait of Andy Warhol, who, like me, loved to wear wigs, but also of other famous people. You might recognize this face. This is a famous actress from the 1950s whose name is Marilyn Monroe. What we are going to be looking at closely are Andy Warhol's screen prints of flowers. Check out this beautiful and very large masterpiece created by Andy. This will give you an idea of just how large his flower prints are. This is going to be our inspiration for the set of prints that we will be creating with sunflowers. So let's get started. Okay, boys and girls, let's get ready to make our positive and negative prints. So what you're going to need to get first from the store are 2 different color pieces of paper. Now, you might notice I've got some things on my paper, and that's because I'm recycling paper. So if you have paper that's just plain and clean on both sides, congratulations, we've used all the recycled paper. However, if you happen to have paper that has things on one side, then that's your signal to know that this is the back of the paper. And as you know, we always write our names on the back of our paper. So I got from the store 2 pieces of paper in 2 different colors, and I wrote my name on the side that has the stuff on it because that's the back. Now that I've got my name on both pieces of paper, I'm going to go ahead and set it aside. A good place to put it would be on your chair or a place where it's not going to be anywhere near your printing stuff because you don't want to get any of the printing ink on your paper before it's time. So you're going to be using some tools today that are required for printing. The first tool you're going to be using today is something called a brayer. It might look familiar to you. It's a lot like what mom or dad uses to paint the walls in your house, except theirs is very furry on the end. This one is rubbery. That will do a better job for printing. Your printing surface today, or printing plate, is something called a jelly plate. You can touch it and you'll see it has a very interesting texture, but please only touch it with the tip of your finger, not your nails, as that surface can get cut by your sharp nails. The other thing we're going to be using today is paint, but a lot of times when you're printing, you would use something called printing ink. This is just black paint. Here's how you're going to go ahead and get your printing plate ready for printing. Your first step is to dip your brayer into the ink so that you have a nice amount of ink on your brayer. You don't want to roll it through the ink. You just want to dip to grab it. Now my goal is to cover the entire surface of the brayer with ink, which as you can see, it's not covered. So to do that, I'm going to roll in this empty area on my printing surface, or this little inking plate is what I'll call this. So I dipped again and I'm rolling back and forth but I can see there's some bald spots, like right here where I didn't get any ink. So instead of just rolling up and down, I'm also going to roll a little bit side to side so that my brayer is completely covered in ink. When it looks pretty good, then I'm going to put that ink on my jelly plate. So I'm just rolling it back and forth, up and down. My goal is to make sure that the entire surface is covered with ink. It doesn't have to be super duper shiny with ink, but the whole thing needs to be covered. It should be all black. All right, that looks pretty good to me. Set my brayer down. Now I can pick a flower. You have a couple of sunflowers on your table. They're not real. Pick one that you think you'd like to use for your first print. You'll get to print as many times as you like. Your goal is to kind of open out the petals of this flower before you set it down. Once you've placed it though, even if it's not touching the surface, you don't want to pick it up and move it. Just leave it. And I've got my piece of paper. I remember this is the back, which means that's the front. And the front is where I'm going to capture my print. When I lay this down, there's a little bit of a bump there because that's the back side of the flower. That's okay. As soon as you set this down though, you cannot move your paper or else that will not give you a crisp print. So I'm just massaging the back of my paper to try to pick up all of that paint. Let's see how I did. Not too shabby. I can see the outside lines of my flower. I have an empty shape on the inside. That's called a negative shape. The empty shape is my negative shape. But wait, there's more. I'm going to take this flower off now very carefully, set it aside, and pull my second print. That's right, I didn't even put ink on it. I just took the flower off. Now I'm massaging really firmly on the back to get my positive or filled in print. And there it is. I can see my flower right there. Now sometimes your prints are going to turn out great and other times not so much. There's a lot of white areas here. What that tells me is I need more ink. And on this one, I can see it looks a little bit bubbly. Well, that's because I actually got a little bit of water on that flower. So maybe that's why those parts appear there. The good news is once you're done with these two prints and you've put them on the drying rack, you can go right back to the store for 2 more different color sheets of paper to pull 2 more prints. All right, so let's review. Name and teacher code on the back. Dip. Roll, make sure the brayer is covered, add ink to the entire surface. If there's any blank spots, make sure you add more ink. The whole thing should be nice and covered with paint. All right, there we go. That looks nice and shiny. Next step, take a flower, open the petals gently, flip it upside down, lower it. Don't move it once it's on the surface. Pull your first print. This will be your negative one. It's going to leave a big bump right there because that's where the flower is. That's okay. I'm massaging it, not picking my paper up. It's okay that it's lumpy and bumpy. This flower was a lot bigger. Peel that off. Negative shape. This one turned out a lot better because I made sure there was more paint on the surface. Take this off, set it aside. Now do your positive or your filled in shape. Make sure to really massage it. And there you go. I can kind of see the shape of the sunflower. Once you've done 2, now you can go to the store, get 2 more sheets of paper, and do it all over again. All right, guys, have fun. All right, so I was able to get 3 sets of prints done, meaning I was able to get 3 negative shapes. Notice that it's an empty shape. We could also call this an organic shape. We could call it an organic shape because it's the shape of something that is found in nature. This is the shape of a flower, and because flowers are found in nature, we could call this an organic shape. In contrast, look at the shape of the printing plate. That is a square. Squares are not something that grow outside in nature. That is called a geometric shape. So now I've got my negative or empty organic shape. I also have my positive shape. And these were my favorite sets of prints. And this is why I love how this really looks like that flower, that sunflower that I was printing. Now my goal is to cut this flower out and glue it onto this piece of paper. So I'm going to take my scissors and I'm not going to cut it so that I'm cutting right along the line. I'm going to cut a little bit further away from the line. So I'm staying not right along the line, but kind of away from it. And as you all know, as far as scissor safety 101 goes, your hand that's cutting always faces outward. Your hand that is holding the paper is actually the one who has to do all of the work. Look at how my left hand is moving all over the place, rotating that paper, while my right hand, all it's doing is opening and closing the scissors. It's called teamwork, people, and my hands have it. Friends, I hope you're also noticing that I'm leaving a little bit of space around those flowers. I'm not cutting right next to it, and sometimes I can't tell what the flower petals were doing, so I'm just going to, imagine it in that thing called my imagination, and boop. Don't forget to please recycle your paper. Now I have my flower cut out. The thing is, this paper now is all lumpy and bumpy, so I'm going to flip this over, give it a little massage to kind of iron it flat with my hands. It's not perfectly flat, but hey, it's a lot better than it was. And now I'm ready to glue this onto here. Now, if I wanted to, I could try to figure out where exactly it would fit best. But you know what? I kind of like being able to see the blue on the outside, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. I'm going to flip this over, and using my glue brush, I'm only putting glue around the edges. You know, if you have glue around the edges, you never ever need any glue in the middle because the glue around the edges is holding it down. So I'm just going around the outside lines of the flower and done. Notice I did that quickly so that my glue did not dry as I was going around the edges. I think I like it. Yeah, kind of like that. So now that I've got it where I want it to be, I'm going to flip this over, give my paper a massage. Paper likey. When that's done, now starts the fun part. I have gotten 1 color of puffy paint. You may use 1 color of puffy paint. And I picked this color for a reason. I picked this color because it wasn't pink and it wasn't blue. In fact, it's a nice bold bright yellow, and I wanted it to stand out so that it would have contrast. Contrast is one of those spices that we use when we're creating art. We call that a principle of art. You know, when you're using the puffy paint, to keep the cap on, give it a good shake. Just once till you hear it drop. Take the cap off. Make sure you have yourself a Post-it note so you can practice it. 3 dots to make sure that you've got it. You know how fast it's going to come out, and to make sure it's going to come out at all. You know, sometimes they dry out a little bit. 3 dots for practice, and now I'm going to outline my flower. And I'm doing this at a pretty slow pace, and I don't necessarily have to stay on my lines. I'm kind of going on sometimes the blue lines and sometimes the pink lines. I'm going wherever the puffy paint mood strikes me, and I'm using lines, which, as you know, is an element of art. We've used shape, we've used color, we've used space, And now we're using line, and I am finished. Ooh la la. I love how the yellow contrasts and really makes this pop. So now it's your turn when you're finished.